Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Just a Person podcast, a show that explores life's highs, lows, and in betweens. I'm Madison's brother. Madison has bronchitis, so she asked me to step in and read the intro and outro for this episode. She also asked me to tell you guys that she apologizes if the audio levels are a bit off this time. She has not been able to edit this very much. She's been pretty sick. So thank you for bearing with her. So that being said, this week, Madison sat down with Naya. They talked about her journey through foster care, what it was like being adopted, and how it has affected her view of parenting. Thank you so much for listening, and enjoy the episode.
Hi, Naya.
Hi.
Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yes, I'm excited because your episode is going to be kind of a two-parter between you and Skylar, so that'll be good.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, is I already recorded hers, so I'm coming at it with a little bit of knowledge, but not really the full picture. So it'll be interesting to see how you guys compare a little bit.
Yeah.
Are you ready for our random question to start this off? It's really anything. They are pretty random.
I'm ready.
What is your favorite part of the day?
Ooh, I would say like the evening when I get out of work, like nighttime-ish, because it's always so relaxing.
Like your drive home, or just like just being done with work?
Just being done with work, pretty much.
Okay. Fair enough. I would say for me, it's like, well, I am single and don't have kids. So for me, when I'm like right before I'm going to bed and I'm just like alone for like 10 minutes before I fall asleep and
Yeah.
you don't have anything left to do for the day.
Yeah, that is pretty nice. But I'm never alone now. I got Hudson.
Yeah. I'm sure that's why I was like, you know what, probably anyone with kids or someone that is like also in the bed with them, like it's maybe not the same thing for them. Okay, so normally we start these out by I'd ask you like about your background and your childhood growing up and stuff, but that's kind of this whole episode. So do you want to just get right into it and take us through your journey through foster care?
Yeah. Yeah. So basically, I was born 2001 in South Dakota area. So then I want to say around 4, I asked my mother for clarification, but I think it was around 4, she said that I went into no, I went and lived with my mother up until 4, and then I was living with my grandparents, my birth mother's grandparents. And then she had Antonio when she was in jail, and we were still living with my grandparents. And then when Antonio came, we went into foster care. So then foster care was from there up until I was 7, and then I moved to West Michigan. So
how old were you when Antonio was born?
So I was born in, I think he's 18 right now. So I'm 3 years older than him. So I was about like 3, 4-ish. He's the end of 04, so.
Okay. Yeah, because Skylar said in hers that you lived with them for a little bit and then you left and then you came back for good.
Yeah.
And do you really remember any of that? Or were you you were pretty young.
I remember like a good like chunk of it, but also like I did have to ask my mom a bunch of details. So.
Okay, so you just don't remember, yeah, it's not like you remember like the specific days or like things like that. Just the general like what was going on you can remember.
Yeah. Yep. I wouldn't say core memories, but like big significant memories that are important, I guess.
Can you remember at all what it was like living with the family you were adopted into and then being like kind of like taken back to your birth family and then brought back again? Can you remember at all what that was like?
It was very up and down. I would say I remember it. I like barely remember the Wetzigs house, but the parts that I do remember, it was really fun. And they like, I would say they were the family that loved on us most. So that was really like comforting, and they felt it like made us feel safe. So I think we just felt really comfortable there. But at the same time, it's so scary because, we're going to move houses soon and stuff like that. But then we went back, and obviously we were super excited to be with our birth mom because that's her mom. But then turns out it wasn't a healthy situation. So then we went to a couple other foster places, and that was like that part was like confusing, and like that's where I went up and down. But then going back to the Wetzig's house, definitely like more comforting, I guess. And yeah, you knew they weren't gonna leave, so.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I'm sure it is definitely super confusing when you're a kid and you're like just moving around a lot with people you don't even know.
Yeah. Yep, and you have to trust them a lot when you're like that young, so.
Was that like scary or is it something you got used to?
It was definitely, well, every time we moved houses, it was scary and terrifying because, like, you have to relearn to re-trust a person, and some of them, like, you have to relearn how to act towards people because some foster homes are, like, very, very strict. Like, there's this one foster home that I went in, and we had to ask for everything. We had to ask to get a snack, to go to the bathroom, to do all, like, random normal stuff. And so, like, we had to learn that, otherwise we'd get yelled at. But then other foster homes was like, yeah, you can do whatever. Like this is your home too. So it was like learning that was, I don't know, tricky. But I forgot the second part of your question.
Did you ever get used to moving around or was your normal just kind of like, oh, we have to just wait and see whatever happens?
Yeah, pretty much normal. You just took every day. Like, if we're gonna move, oh, we're moving. If we weren't, then cool. But like, you never knew what was gonna happen the next day.
Oh, really? So every day you didn't know whether or not you'd be going somewhere else?
No, like they don't tell the children when they're gonna move, or basically, but they do. Like, they do, but they don't, I guess. But yeah, I think I was just used to moving, so it just was normal, I guess, but also tricky too, if that makes sense.
Yeah, like the normal thing for you is the moving, but everything else is like kind of chaotic.
Yeah.
That's crazy though. I've never thought about that. Like moving, being a foster child, moving from house to house. These people are like your parents at the time, right? So you have to follow their rules, but all of them have different rules.
Yeah.
So how do you ever know what you're supposed to do?
But like when you just start learning the habits of one house, then you just move to a different house, and then you're like, oh, well, we gotta start all over again.
Did it feel like when I talked to Skylar, she was saying how because you're not the only foster child they've ever had, right? So she was saying how when she was a kid and they would have kids there, to her it felt like, oh, someone for me to play with. Like at first when she was young, she didn't really know what was going on. Was that how it felt for you when you're moving and these people have other kids, or was it just more like a bit scary because you just didn't know the situation you're going into?
There was one house that it was the other house that we stayed in the longest. They had another foster kid, but I think they got her like right around like when they got us too. So that was cool because like we both went there basically around the same time, I guess. So like we were going through like learning new things with her, even though she was like Antonio's age, but like still like another person. But I don't really remember having like any other kids in any other foster home. I guess we might have, but I was just concerned about like protecting Antonio. So
Right. Did you guys go to every foster home together?
yeah, yep. That's what the whole company, I don't company or something wanted for us to stay together because we were siblings. So they tried to do that.
When you say that people didn't have any kids, do you mean like their own biological kids or just there weren't any like no foster kids, nothing at all at these other houses?
So the house that I was talking about just a second ago, they didn't have any other kids of their own. I don't know if they couldn't have any or anything, but that little girl was another foster girl. But yeah, I don't really remember any kids. There probably was some, but I just
Just don't even didn't register with you. Yeah, I honestly that doesn't really surprise me. Like you just had so much going on that they probably even if they were there, whether they were or weren't, it didn't really matter.
Yeah.
But did it
No.
help Sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say the only other kids I remember is at the Wetzigg's house.
Okay.
And yeah, we just played, I guess. But
Do you feel like it helped you having Antonio with you because you were going through it together, or was it more just like you just wanted to protect him? You weren't thinking about anything else that was going on?
I think it was a little bit of both. Like obviously like I'm scared as it is. So then like having someone that I knew, even if he was like could barely talk or anything, it's still like a comfort. But yeah, protecting him back then was like my number one priority because he was so small and so little and yeah. So a little bit of both.
Yeah, that's a pretty big responsibility for a little kid to have like that.
Yep.
But you gotta do what you gotta. I mean, it is your brother, so you gotta do what you gotta do.
Yeah.
So when you guys were adopted, did you feel like since you had kind of been to other families, did you feel like you fit into this family right away, or what was that like transitioning from being in foster care to being adopted?
I think at first it was scary and I didn't like trust anything because the family that I had another little foster sister with, they told me and Antonia that they were going to adopt us. And like, you're not supposed to tell a child that unless like you actually are. I was like, we're getting adopted by these people. But then we didn't. And then we went to a couple, like one other house, and then we got adopted by the Wetzigs. So then I was like, are you sure we're gonna get adopted? Like I was like not gonna get too excited. Like I was already lied to once about it, you know? But once I found out that like it was legit, it was super exciting and scary too, because everything's scary when you're a little kid.
Yeah, it's probably weird too, because what you were used to moving a lot and stuff. So then to be in one place and know that's where you're staying was probably, I'm sure, a little bit unsettling.
Yeah. Yep. But it was also like comforting because I already met these people. So like it wasn't like a random family was adopting me because then it would have just felt like another like placement home, if that makes sense.
So then you had to move from South Dakota to Michigan. Those are two completely different places in my mind.
Yeah, both very cold, but
Is there one that you prefer?
I would say South Dakota only because it's so pretty. They got like a little bit of everything. But sometimes South Dakota has worse winters than Michigan, so but other than that, I think I like South Dakota better.
Was that another thing that was like kind of scary? Was that not only were you moving, like getting adopted, but you're moving to a completely different place?
Yeah, that was scary. Um, but my parents did a good job of making us feel like comforted and like feeling safe and everything. Like they brought us Build-A-Bears and everything, and they made us feel loved, which was good and helpful.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Because I think sometimes when you're an adult, you like think that kids think like adults just because you're an adult, but they really don't. They don't know what's going on. They're just kids.
Yeah, yeah. So they did a really good job on that part.
So did it, like, once you found out that they were like legitimately adopting you and that was going through, were you like, okay, I'm like part of this family now? Like, this is where it ends.
It didn't take long that when I knew that it was legit, but because like my mom told me, I was talking to her about this the other day, but a while, like a couple years ago, maybe something. She was like, when we were in the car on the way home from like the airport or something, or on the way to the airport to Michigan, one of them. I guess I like leaned over and I was like, "It's gonna be okay," to like Antonio, my little brother. Like this is gonna be our forever home. So like I knew, like I caught on quickly because they made us like feel loved. There was no other family that made us feel this loved. So I was like, no way they're gonna lie to us like that. So,
Right, right. And
but
how old were you at that time?
I was like 6. They turned 7 here. So
That's like that's such like a sweet thing for a little kid to say. It's okay. We're home. Like,
yeah,
that's just like wow, that's such a nice little thing for a kid to say.
I know.
And when you were growing up, because you were adopted by them, I mean, you were 6, 7, but that's pretty young. Uh, did you feel that like that was challenging for you? Like, did you have any I don't know how to ask, like, how to phrase this question, but like being adopted, can come with its own challenges, whether you were adopted like from birth or when you're 6 or 12 or whatever.
Yeah.
Did you have any real issues with that, or was it more just about like, I don't know how to ask this question, but like I think like being in foster care can probably come with its own set of things, and then being adopted is like another thing on its own. Do you get it all what I'm trying to ask? Because I don't know how to like phrase it in a way that makes any sense.
Yeah. So like my little brother Antonio, obviously since he was so young when like everything happened, he has like really bad anger issues and like this thing called RAD. I forget what it stands for, but so he has like all of that and like that he got from it. And obviously we're both like traumatized and everything. But I don't know really if I have like anything like him. I know when I first went to their house, I didn't talk for a couple months or a couple weeks because I was scared. I don't really know. I really wasn't diagnosed with anything, so I will just say no for that answer.
Okay. I guess a better way for me to ask that question is I guess sometimes people have like an identity crisis
Oh,
about being adopted, because you know what I mean?
yeah.
So like I'm not trying to imply in any way that something is like wrong with you or like anything like that. But but I'm just saying, is that something you experienced, or was it because you are like you had gone through the foster care system that it wasn't like shocking? Because sometimes people don't tell their kids until they're older that they were adopted, and then that can like cause like an issue, but you already knew because you were 6. So was that like a kind of a smoother transition not into like being adopted because you already knew what was going on?
I think it was smoother for me, yeah. And my parents do a really good job with making known and like telling us who our birth parents are and like telling us our story more. With my younger siblings, they know who their birth, like they're really young. My little sister came when she was 6 months old and yeah. So my mom like had them like meet their parents or like FaceTime their mom up until like she passed away a couple years ago, up until then. So my parents do a really good job with telling us our background and everything and making us, yeah, I guess just telling us our background.
Yeah, my cousin adopted a baby, and so like part of that is you have to read a bunch of books and stuff like that, like to be allowed to do it. And she was saying that like kids that just know as opposed to kids that don't, it's like a bit easier because they don't feel like they've been lied to, like they know their
Yeah,
background and all that stuff.
it's another like trust thing too, I feel like. Because if they found out later and they didn't know, I feel like that build a big barrier.
Do you think as you've grown older, your perspective has changed on like maybe how you used to think about it? I mean, when you're a teenager, life is hard enough as it is. So and then having like all this layered on top of it, I'm sure was difficult. So do you think as you've gotten older, your perspective about what you've gone through has changed, and especially now that you have like your own child?
I would say so, yeah. It makes me definitely I feel like it makes me like stronger as a like parent and to be like very patient because when I was pregnant when I first found out I was pregnant people were giving me the option to put him up for adoption and like that's like my one rule ever since I was a little kid that I would not put him in adoption. So I think when he was born I was like no matter what I'm gonna do the best I can and learning from like all the bad parents that I've seen in my lifetime from foster care and then comparing it to like how my parents loved each and every single one of their children. So like taking both sides is has been really helpful for me like parenting. But then again, he's only 4 months old, so like we'll see how it continues. But yeah, I think it definitely gained had me gain a new perspective on everything not with only just my child, but with like how I see other people's children in foster care and stuff. So
Yeah, that's interesting to not only have the perspective of your parents, but like you saw all these other parents, and then it became probably very clear to you how you would never want to be as a parent.
Yeah.
And then being put in a situation where these people love you a lot and take care of you, and you're like, oh, like that's, that is interesting to have that perspective.
Yeah. Very helpful too.
Now, the last question I always ask is about advice. So, do you have advice for someone out there that's maybe in foster care or going through the adoption process? Anything like that?
For a kid that's in foster care, I would say, ooh, I don't know.
That's okay. Actually, I'm going to ask you, if you want to think about that for a second, I'm going to ask you another question that I forgot to put on my list here, but is there anything that either as a foster parent or as the Wetzigs adopting you that people could do to make kids more comfortable and less afraid, or is it just it takes time?
With adopting or just like having foster children?
Either.
I guess it's like the same category, but for that, I would say for the parents to love them as much as you can and to be patient with them. I think patience is a very good key aspect. That's something my parents are both very good at. And yeah, I think that's it. Just to love them as much as you can and try to understand them too. Ask them what their needs are too, because it's very scary. So tell them that they're welcome and everything, and that you're there to support their needs and everything, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Yeah, just let them have that little bit of stability that's kind of missing. Yeah.
Yep.
Do you have any thoughts on advice? I know it's kind of a big question.
I know. For the kids, I would say, just because you're not adopted yet, just don't give up on the whole thinking that you're not gonna get adopted. Because I started to think that I wasn't gonna get adopted, because the older you get, the less of a chance of you getting adopted. But it'll work out, and God has a plan, and there's a family out there that will love you. But for parents, I would say the same thing I said earlier.
Okay, perfect. No, that makes a lot of sense. I'm sure as a kid, like it, not only are you being moved around through foster homes, you're afraid because it's scary.
Yeah.
And you're scared you're not going to get adopted. Like that's just for a kid that's just trying to live their life. That's so many things on top of it that you have to think about and try to process.
Yeah. Definitely a lot of things missed out on childhood during foster care because of the moving, but
Well, thank you so much for doing this. I know that this is a tough topic, but I think it's important for people to tell stories like these so people can be more aware of what's going on. You hear a lot of talk, at least I have in my life, about like foster care and adoption and stuff, but you don't ever get to hear it from the kids' side.
yeah. Yep. I think people should like interview like foster kids more. I think this is what you're doing is good, because it'll gain people like more perspective or whatever, because people only think about like the parents, like it must be so hard on you, and like it is bringing children into your home, but it's also hard on the children too. And having Skylar's view of it too is I'm interested in hearing that side, because she's a sibling of a foster family. So yeah, I think this is really cool.
Yeah, well, thank you for doing it. I had a great time and I really appreciate you talking to me.
Well, thank you for having me.
All right, I'll talk to you later.
All right, bye.
Wow. What nice people they were. Am I right? Thanks so much to Naya for being on this week's episode. If you have a story that you would want to share on the show, or a topic you'd like to see discussed, find us on Instagram and Facebook at justapersonpod, or send us an email at justapersonpod@gmail.com. We'll see you next Monday with another new episode. But you won't hear from me again, so keep listening. because you never know when I might pop up again. No, I'm just kidding. My sister does a good job. Keep listening, keep supporting, and that's it.